Okay, so photosynthesis, um, you need to know how photosynthesis and respiration work and where it occurs. You need to know how to read a graph. You need to know that photosynthesis makes sugar, which is glucose, C6H12O6. You need to know that cellular respiration takes the glucose, the sugar, and converts it to ATP, which is energy that your cells can use. This occurs in the mitochondria. Photosynthesis and respiration are chemical reactions. We'll talk about that in just a second. So, in photosynthesis, we have light, which creates the reaction, the chemical reaction. Without it, nothing would ever happen. The carbon dioxide that's taken up through the stomas in the leaves, which are the tiny holes on the undersides of the leaves. It takes up the water through the roots. Once those things are present, you can create photosynthesis within the chloroplast. The chloroplast has a gel in it, which is the pigment that makes the plant green. It's also, that gel is called chlorophyll. That chlorophyll is also responsible for absorbing the sunlight to help photosynthesis take place. The chloroplast is basically a container where the chlorophyll sits in it, and the chlorophyll is responsible for the process of photosynthesis. Now, out of photosynthesis, we have oxygen. Oxygen is for us to breathe, the humans to breathe or animals to breathe. And then it also has sugar that remains in the plant to help it have energy. Some of this oxygen is left behind because it's used in cellular respiration. So when we come to the equations, you do have to know these equations in order to answer a couple of questions on the test. Photosynthesis occurs in plants only inside the chloroplast with the help of the chlorophyll, and without sunlight it wouldn't happen. So here's the equation. You have 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules that with sunlight create oxygen, 6 oxygen molecules, and 1 sugar molecule. Now, once this is done, remember this is photosynthesis, so the plant is making its own energy, whereas people or animals have to consume their energy. Once photosynthesis has occurred and once an animal has consumed their food, the sugar made is then put into cellular respiration. Remember, photosynthesis is taking place in the chloroplast, in the chlorophyll, whereas cellular respiration for a plant and for an animal, respiration occurs in both plants and animals, all living organisms. Cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. So the sugar that was made in chlorophyll and what we consume as living organisms goes into cellular respiration along with the oxygen. So you have 6 oxygen. Look at it, it's the opposite of photosynthesis. 6 oxygen and 1 sugar, which 6 oxygen, 1 sugar, creates carbon dioxide and water. Same as photosynthesis, backwards. But in the end, it creates ATP. So in cellular respiration, in the mitochondria, we have 6 carbon dioxides, 1 sugar molecule, creating 6 carbon dioxides and 6 waters that make ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Remember, all cells respire. Any living organism has respiration occurring in the mitochondria. So we know photosynthesis in plants makes sugar, and then the sugar that we make is from what we consume as food. Respiration, plants and animals respire. This here is a picture you will see on the final exam. This is a compound of sugar. So you have a sugar molecule here. You have oxygen here. Once it's broken down, which is what this is showing you, it turns into carbon dioxide and water. So it is the equation just in picture form. So we have the oxygen, the sugar, after activation energy, which is the yield, it turns into or breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. This picture is on the test. You will have to be able to answer the question, and here is how you need to know how to answer it. These equations are on the test. You will have to be able to remember them and to answer questions related to them. And so in this picture it says atoms are rearranged into new molecules and energy is being released. So the energy, let's talk about that. So we talked about that you can't use the sugar. So you have to put the sugar into the mitochondria, which then does respiration, which then gives us ATP as a product. So ATP, animals and plants make the ATP from their food in the mitochondria. They take the sugar and turn it into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. The ATP is broken down into ADP to create energy. So when we talked about this before, we know that respiration makes the ATP. One of those phosphates falls off, which then gives us ADP, which is what creates the energy. And then we go back through the cycle making more ATP, dropping off a phosphate, and having ADP, which is the energy created. So on and so forth. That cycle continues. Plants make food and animals eat food to access energy in the food and use the food to make energy molecules. So those are very important. That's the end of the PowerPoint. That's the end of the information that we reviewed for the final exam. So be sure that if you have any questions that you're asking. Otherwise, that's the end of the review, and you have your study guide. Remember, you can use the study guide on the test. And the other thing is, remember that you have 60 minutes to answer 60 questions. So don't bank on the study guide as your answer sheet. You need to know a lot of the information before you go into the final exam.